the sleek, chromium-plated hull of the Elysian survey vessel. Resilient, glinted in the Earth's sunlight as it docked at the North Atlantic Forward Station. Captain Amara Envorex stood at the command deck, her iridescent scales shifting from deep purple to a tense cerulean as she observed the human outpost through the view screen. Behind her, Lieutenant Vorax was meticulously checking their environmental suits for the 15th time. "Captain, I've updated our survival protocols based on Earth's gravity fluctuations and atmospheric toxicity levels," Vorax reported, his dorsal crest flattening with concern. "The humans claim this isn't a death world, but our preliminary scans indicate otherwise." Amara's compound eyes narrowed, reflecting multiple images of the approaching Earth station. "They always say that." Vorax. "Remember Therasia? The locals insisted it was a moderately challenging environment. Yet the acid rain dissolved 3 of our reinforced probes within minutes." "That was quite educational," Vorax agreed, mandibles clicking in what passed for an Elysian smile. "Our adaptive carapace technology improved significantly after that encounter." Earth had joined the Galactic Council merely 2 decades ago, and despite being classified as a habitable zone planet by most standards, the Elysian scientific core remained skeptical. Humans were notoriously prone to understatement regarding their planetary conditions, and Amara's mission was simple: document Earth's true survival challenges and classify it accordingly in the Elysian Deathworld Index. "Our official welcome party approaches," Vorax noted, gesturing toward the airlock where a small delegation of humans waited. "Shall I activate our defensive shields?" Amara flicked her antennae dismissively. "Unnecessary. Our exoskeletons can withstand pressures that would liquefy their soft tissues. Besides, this is a diplomatic mission. We're here to gather data, not intimidate." As the airlock cycled open, Amara straightened to her full height of nearly 8 feet, her armored exoskeleton gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that signaled her rank and accomplishments. Each luminescent stripe represented a death world she had successfully surveyed and survived. 37 in total, a record unmatched in the Elysian core. The human delegation consisted of 5 individuals, 2 wearing what appeared to be military uniforms, and 3 in civilian attire. Their leader, a dark-skinned woman with close-cropped silver hair, stepped forward. "Captain Envorex, welcome to Earth's Forward Station. I'm Admiral Helena Chen." The woman paused, consulting a small device in her hand. "I apologize. My name is actually Admiral Helena Choi. There was a translation error in our systems. We're honored to host the renowned Elysian Survey Corps." Amara performed the formal greeting gesture, extending her primary appendages in the position that indicated respect without submission. "The honor is ours. Admiral, the Elysian High Command has great interest in properly classifying Earth's survival challenges." One of the civilians, a young male with curly hair and an expression Amara recognized as enthusiasm, bounced slightly on his feet. "Captain Envorex, I've read all about your survival on Kronos 9. Is it true you withstood the methane firestorms by generating your own counterpressure field?" Amara's bioluminescence pulsed with pride. "Indeed. The Kronos system presents unique challenges. The firestorms reach temperatures of 1,200 degrees Celsius, but with proper adaptation—" "Dante, please," Admiral Choi interrupted. "Captain Envorex has just arrived. There will be plenty of time for exchanging survival stories during the conference." "Sorry, Mom," the young human replied, not looking particularly apologetic. "I'm Dante Williams, by the way. I'm part of Earth's student exchange program. I'll be your cultural liaison during your stay." Amara's sensory appendages twitched with interest. Earth's approach to training their young was notably different from the Elysian method of isolated survival simulations. The idea of using inexperienced youths as diplomatic representatives seemed inefficient. A pleasure, young Williams. I look forward to learning about your planet's most extreme conditions. My records indicate your polar regions and deep ocean trenches offer particularly promising research opportunities. The Admiral gestured toward the station's interior. We've prepared specialized quarters for you, accounting for your atmospheric and gravitational preferences. There's a full orientation package waiting for you, including safety protocols for navigating human spaces. Safety protocols? Vorax inquired, his tone suggesting he found the concept amusing. With respect, Admiral, we've survived environments where the atmospheric pressure would crush your strongest submarines. I doubt your station presents any meaningful hazards to beings of our physiological resilience. Before the Admiral could respond, an alarm blared through the docking bay. Red lights flashed as a computerized voice announced, "Warning. Unauthorized entry detected in Sector 7. Security protocols activated." Amara immediately shifted into defensive posture, her exoskeleton hardening as specialized glands prepared to discharge plasma if necessary. "Is your station under attack, Admiral?" Choi tapped her communication device with surprising calmness. "Control room, report. What's happening in Sector 7? A harried voice responded through the speaker. "Ma'am, it's the Terra Park tour group. They took a wrong turn after the zero-gravity basketball game and bypassed 3 security checkpoints somehow. They're headed toward the diplomatic wing." The Admiral sighed deeply. "Stand down the alert. Send an escort to redirect them to the proper recreation area." Amara and Vorax exchanged confused glances, their telepathic communication channel buzzing with uncertainty. Before either could ask for clarification, the doors at the far end of the docking bay slid open, and a crowd of approximately 20 humans of various ages poured in, chattering excitedly. "Look, aliens!" a small human child exclaimed, pointing directly at Amara and Vorax. "Cool. Do you breathe fire? Can you fly? Are those real spikes?" Amara's threat assessment systems went into overdrive. These civilians had penetrated multiple security layers of what was supposedly a high-security facility. Were they testing her? Was this some form of human dominance display? She decided a demonstration might be appropriate, drawing herself up to her full height. Amara activated her thoracic heat chambers and expelled a controlled jet of blue-white plasma that arced impressively over the heads of the humans, dissipating harmlessly against the ceiling's fireproof coating. Instead of the expected awe or respectful fear, the crowd erupted into applause and delighted exclamations. "That was awesome!" shouted a teenager. "Way better than the holographic dragons at Terra Park." "Can you do it again?" asked another. "My video didn't capture it properly." A middle-aged human stepped forward, extending a hand toward Vorax. "Mason Williams, lead engineer for Terra Park Entertainment. That plasma discharge was spectacular. Would you consider a guest appearance in our Interstellar Thrills show? The compensation would be quite generous." Amara's exoskeleton nearly locked up in confusion. These humans had breached security and were now attempting to hire them for entertainment? Admiral Choi stepped between the tourists and the increasingly bewildered Elysians. "Mr. Williams, you and your tour group are in a restricted area. This is a diplomatic reception, not a Terra Park attraction." The engineer shrugged, completely unperturbed. "Sorry about that. Admiral, the kids wanted to try the new gravity slide, but the maintenance crew had it blocked off. Mia found an alternative route through the service corridors." He gestured toward a petite woman who waved cheerfully. "Those corridors were secured with bioscanners and motion detectors," Vorax stated flatly, unable to contain his disbelief. Mia Williams, apparently related to the engineer, laughed. "Oh, those old things? They use the same algorithms as the Terra Park VIP line skippers. My daughter Riley figured out how to bypass those years ago for her science fair project. Amara's sensory appendages quivered with indignation. The humans were treating their sophisticated security systems as children's puzzles. More disturbingly, they seemed entirely unconcerned about potential dangers. On any properly classified death world, such casual disregard for security protocols would result in immediate death. Dante stepped forward, looking simultaneously embarrassed and amused. Captain Vorax, Lieutenant Vorax, please allow me to introduce my family. My father, Mason Williams, designs amusement park rides. My mother, Mia Williams, is a structural engineer. And somewhere in this crowd is my sister Riley, who's probably hacking into your ship's entertainment system as we speak. I am not, came an indignant voice from behind a group of tourists. A teenage human with brightly colored hair emerged, glaring at her brother. I'm merely analyzing their communication frequencies for educational purposes. Admiral Choi looked as though she might be developing what humans called a headache. Mason, please get your tour group back to the authorized recreation areas. The Galactic Peace Conference preparations are already behind schedule, and having civilians wandering through secure areas isn't helping. As the Williams family corralled the tourists toward the exit, Dante remained behind, his expression brightening. Captain Vorax, I've been assigned as your guide during the conference. I've prepared a comprehensive tour of Earth's most extreme environments, virtually, of course, unless you'd prefer real exposure to our harshest conditions. Amara's compound eyes refocused on the young human with new interest. Perhaps this assignment would provide valuable data after all. I would prefer authentic experiences whenever possible. The Elysian Survey Corps prides itself on direct environmental interaction. Dante's grin widened alarmingly. Perfect. I've already obtained clearance for expeditions to downtown Manhattan during rush hour, a Texas summer heat wave. And if we're really lucky, we might catch the edges of tropical storm season. You'll get to experience Earth's true death world conditions firsthand. As they followed the Admiral deeper into the station, Vorax transmitted privately to Amara. Captain, I'm detecting unusual enthusiasm in the human's vital signs when discussing these supposedly extreme conditions. Should we be concerned? Amara's reply carried confidence born from surviving the methane lakes of Titan and the radiation belts of Kepler 186f. Hardly. Lieutenant, whatever challenges Earth presents, we've endured far worse. These humans clearly overestimate their planet's hostility. Remember our mission. Accurate classification for the Elysian archives. Little did she know that Earth would soon challenge every survival metric in her considerable experience. The conference center hummed with activity as representatives from 17 different worlds prepared for the Galactic Peace Conference. Amara stood at the podium, her exoskeleton polished to a high sheen, addressing an audience composed primarily of human students and scientific personnel. The Therasia gas giants present atmospheric turbulence that would shred your spacecraft in seconds, she explained, gesturing to the holographic display showing swirling, toxic clouds. Yet, Elysian survey teams navigated these storms using bioadaptive shields that— Excuse me, interrupted a voice from the back row. Riley Williams had raised her hand, her expression challenging. Didn't 3 of your ships crash during that expedition? Amara's mandibles clicked in irritation. 4 ships were lost. Yes, but that represents a survival rate of 73.4%, which exceeds our projected success metrics for a Class 9 death world. So you consider a 26.6% casualty rate acceptable? Riley pressed, her fingers rapidly tapping on a data tablet. Because Earth's deep-sea exploration teams maintain a 99.7% survival rate, and we consider anything below 99.9% a critical failure requiring immediate protocol revision. Different methodologies, Amara replied stiffly. The Elysian approach prioritizes data collection over individual safety margins. Dante, sitting in the front row, winced visibly. His sister had been challenging every claim Amara made for the past hour, turning what was supposed to be an informative lecture into something the humans were calling a debate. Perhaps we should move on to the practical demonstrations, Dante suggested, standing quickly. Captain Envorex has graciously agreed to experience some of Earth's environmental challenges firsthand. Riley's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. Has she? Excellent. I've prepared a statistical analysis of human stress responses to various Earth environments. It would be fascinating to compare Elysian reactions. Amara felt her patience wearing thin. These humans, particularly the younger female, seemed determined to undermine her authority. Nevertheless, she maintained her professional demeanor. I welcome the opportunity to collect comparative data, she stated. What is your first proposed challenge, Liaison Williams? Dante's smile should have been her first warning. 4 hours later, Amara stood in the middle of Times Square, Manhattan, during what the humans called rush hour. Her sensory appendages were flattened against her head in a desperate attempt to filter the overwhelming stimuli bombarding her from all directions. Thousands of humans moved in seemingly random patterns, their trajectory algorithms impossible to predict. Massive vehicles honked and screeched, releasing pollutants that, while not immediately toxic to her respiratory system, created a cacophony of conflicting chemical signals. Enormous screens flashed with rapidly changing images, confusing her optical processors. And the noise, constant, chaotic, unrelenting noise. How are you finding it? Dante shouted over the din, looking entirely comfortable in this maelstrom of sensory assault. Amara struggled to maintain her composure. The environmental stressors are noteworthy, though primarily sensory rather than physically threatening. That's because you're experiencing it as a tourist, Riley commented, appearing beside them with 3 containers of what humans called coffee. Try navigating this twice daily for work, while maintaining optimal productivity metrics. Vorax, who had insisted on accompanying them, was systematically documenting the various stimuli. The unpredictability factor is significant, he admitted. On most Deathworlds, threats follow predictable patterns, extreme temperature cycles, toxic emissions at regular intervals, gravitational fluctuations. This environment appears to operate on chaos theory. A yellow vehicle screeched to a halt inches from where they stood, the driver leaning out to shout incomprehensibly before accelerating away. Amara's defensive glands automatically produced a plasma charge before she consciously suppressed it. Your cardiovascular readings just spiked, Riley noted, glancing at her monitoring device. Interesting. Your species prioritizes different threat responses than humans. This is merely a minor adjustment period, Amara insisted, though her internal biometrics told a different story. Her stress hormones had reached levels typically associated with Class 7 Deathworld exploration. Dante checked his watch. We should head to Central Park for our picnic before the afternoon crowd hits. The subway will be fastest. Subway? Amara questioned. An underground transportation system? That seems reasonably orderly. Riley and Dante exchanged glances that Amara was beginning to recognize as the human expression for, they have no idea what's coming. The subway, as it turned out, was worse than the streets above. Hundreds of humans packed into a metal container that accelerated, decelerated, and swayed unpredictably. The temperature rose steadily as more bodies entered, creating what Amara's environmental suit classified as dangerously unstable climate conditions. The noise, both mechanical and biological, created a disorienting echo chamber that interfered with her directional sensors. Most alarming was the complete disregard humans showed for personal space. On Elysia, maintaining a minimum distance of 3 body lengths was considered essential for both safety and respect. Here, humans pressed against each other without apparent concern, some even sleeping while standing, swaying with the motion of the transport. "How do you tolerate this?" Amara finally asked, her usual confidence faltering. "Tolerance isn't the right word," Dante replied thoughtfully. "It's more like adaptation. Most New Yorkers develop a kind of selective attention. You learn to focus only on what matters and filter everything else out." "Neurological adaptation," Vorax murmured, making notes. "Fascinating. Their brains rewire in response to chronic stressors." Riley, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "That's our stop. Everyone move toward the doors, quickly." The ensuing rush of bodies nearly separated their group. Amara found herself using her superior strength to navigate through the crowd, only to be reprimanded by an elderly human who tapped her exoskeleton with a walking aid and told her to "mind your manners, young lady, no matter how many legs you've got." When they finally emerged into Central Park, Amara felt an unexpected wave of relief. Though still within the urban environment, the relative increase in plant life and decrease in population density created a momentary sense of familiarity. "Your vital signs are stabilizing," Riley observed, still monitoring her devices. "Interesting. You respond positively to green spaces, just like humans." "All intelligent life forms evolved in natural environments," Amara replied, attempting to regain her authoritative tone. "It's hardly surprising that artificial constructs create uniform stress responses. Yet humans built these artificial environments voluntarily," Vorax pointed out. "They created these stressors, then adapted to them. It's counterintuitive." Dante spread a blanket on the grass and began unpacking food containers. "That's the thing about humans. We're really good at creating problems, then really good at solving them. Sometimes, we even solve them before moving on to create new ones." As they settled for their meal, Amara found herself reassessing the data. Earth was not a death world in the traditional sense. No extreme gravity, no toxic atmosphere, no predators larger than humans themselves. Yet the challenges were real, and, in some ways, more insidious than the obvious threats of planets like Therasia. "Your next experience," Dante announced as they finished eating, "is scheduled for tomorrow. We're flying to Houston, Texas, where they're experiencing what locals call a typical summer heat wave. Temperatures should reach about 40 degrees Celsius. Amara's confidence returned somewhat. "Thermal extremes are well within our adaptive range. Elysians can withstand temperatures from 200 to 300 degrees Celsius with proper preparation." Riley smirked. "It's not just the heat, it's the humidity, and the fact that humans still conduct business as usual during these conditions. You'll be attending a baseball game in an outdoor stadium, followed by a technology conference in a convention center, where the air conditioning will be set to approximately 18 degrees Celsius. The rapid temperature differential is the challenge," Vorax realized aloud. "Constant adaptation rather than sustained endurance." "Exactly," Dante confirmed. "Earth doesn't try to kill you all at once like your Deathworlds. It's more of a death by 1,000 cuts approach." Amara's antenna twitched with what might have been concern. "I believe we can manage variable thermal conditions. Liaison Williams?" "We'll see," Riley murmured, her attention already back on her data tablet. That evening, while reviewing the day's findings in their quarters at the forward station, Amara found herself unexpectedly troubled. The human environments had not been physically dangerous, Indeed, by Elysian standards, Earth barely qualified as a challenging planet, yet she felt drained in a way that even the caustic storms of Kelper 22b hadn't affected her. "Lieutenant, are you experiencing unusual fatigue?" she asked Vorax, who was meticulously organizing their environmental samples. "Indeed, Captain," he admitted. "My energy reserves are at 73%, significantly lower than expected given the minimal physical exertion required today. I've been analyzing possible causes." "And your conclusions?" Vorax's mandibles worked thoughtfully. "Preliminary hypothesis. Continuous adaptive requirements without recovery intervals create cumulative stress that exceeds single-instance extreme challenges. In simpler terms, Captain, the humans don't give you time to catch your breath." Amara considered this. Throughout her career surveying Deathworlds, the pattern had been consistent. Identify the primary threat, adapt to it, collect data, and move on. Earth presented no single overwhelming challenge, but rather a constant barrage of minor stressors that required continual readjustment. "There's another factor," Vorax added hesitantly. "The humans themselves. Their behavior patterns are unpredictable. On traditional Deathworlds, local life forms follow logical patterns dictated by survival imperatives. Humans appear to operate on emotional variables that I cannot quantify." "Emotions are inefficient," Amara stated, repeating the core principle of Elysian survival philosophy. "They represent evolutionary weaknesses that advanced species should overcome." "Yet the humans have survived and thrived," Vorax countered. "Their emotional responses somehow contribute to their adaptive success. It's contradictory to everything in our scientific understanding." A notification chimed on their communication console, interrupting their discussion. Dante's face appeared on the screen, his expression animated. "Captain Enverex, great news. There's a tropical storm developing in the Gulf of Mexico. It should reach Houston just as we arrive. They're calling it a moderate weather event, so it's perfect for your Earth experience tour." Amara's compound eyes blinked in rapid succession. "You consider a destructive meteorological phenomenon. Good news?" Dante nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. It's not every day we get to show our visitors how humans handle natural disasters. The conference organizers have already adjusted the schedule to include emergency response observation. You'll get to see our adaptive strategies in real time." After the communication ended, Amara turned to Vorax. "Update our survival protocols. I believe Earth may require reassessment." The Houston Interplanetary Convention Center buzzed with activity, despite the worsening weather conditions outside. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for the Survival Strategies Across Hostile Environments symposium, with Amara scheduled as the keynote speaker. Rain lashed against the enormous transparent aluminum windows, driven by winds that the local news described as gusting to 75 miles per hour. Vorax had converted this to Elysian measurement standards and determined it was merely a moderate atmospheric disturbance by their criteria. Nevertheless, the humans seemed to be taking it quite seriously. "The governor has issued evacuation orders for coastal areas," Dante explained as he guided Amara through the crowded convention hall. "The convention center is serving as an emergency shelter for people who couldn't leave in time." Indeed, one entire wing of the massive building had been transformed into a temporary living space, with humans of all ages setting up cots, distributing food, and organizing activities for children. What struck Amara most was the orderliness of it all. There was no panic, no fighting for resources, just efficient community organization. "Your species has remarkably structured disaster protocols," she observed. Dante laughed. "Not really. Most of this is just people figuring things out as they go. Humans are pretty good at improvising when we need to. Improvising? Amara repeated the unfamiliar concept. You mean you don't follow predetermined survival algorithms? Some people do, some don't. Everyone adapts in their own way. Dante gestured toward a group of elderly humans who were organizing a card game. Those folks have probably been through dozens of storms. They know from experience what works for them. Amara's sensory appendages twitched with confusion. But without standardized protocols, how do you ensure optimal survival rates? That's where community comes in, Riley said, appearing beside them with data tablets for both Amara and Vorax. Humans use social connections as survival multipliers. We're individually adaptable, but collectively resilient. Amara accepted the tablet, scanning the information displayed. It contained the schedule for the day's symposium, including her presentation on extreme environment adaptation, the Elysian approach. I notice my speaking time has been reduced, she commented, trying to keep the displeasure from her voice. We had to make room for the debate segment, Riley explained, not quite meeting Amara's compound eyes. The conference committee thought it would be valuable to directly compare different species' approaches to survival challenges. Vorax leaned closer to examine the schedule. It says you're participating in this debate. Riley Williams, as Amara's opponent. Riley nodded, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. The committee thought it would be interesting to have a human perspective. Specifically, I'll be arguing that emotional responses are adaptive advantages rather than weaknesses in survival situations. Amara's exoskeleton stiffened. That position contradicts established xenobiological science. Emotions are evolutionary artifacts that impede rational decision-making under stress. That's the Elysian view, Riley agreed. And it's precisely what makes this debate worth having. Different evolutionary paths, different survival strategies. Before Amara could respond, a rumbling crash sounded from outside, followed by flickering lights throughout the convention center. Emergency systems activated immediately, bathing the area in blue backup lighting. That sounded like structural damage, Vorax said, his sensory appendages extended to analyze the vibrations. Dante was already checking his communication device. Lightning strike on one of the main power distribution nodes. We're on backup generators now. He seemed remarkably unconcerned. Should we implement evacuation procedures? Amara asked, shifting automatically into emergency response mode. Not necessary, Riley replied, consulting her own device. The building's designed to withstand much worse. Category 5 hurricane rated, this is just a tropical storm. Amara found the humans' casual response to potential danger both confusing and, if she were honest with herself, somewhat impressive. On Elysia, any environmental threat was met with immediate, structured countermeasures. Here, the humans seem to accept a certain level of risk as normal. Your debate preparation will have to wait, Dante said, checking a new message. They need volunteers to help move some equipment away from a leaking section in the East Wing. Given your strength, you'd be perfect. Without waiting for a response, he began leading them through the convention center's labyrinthine corridors. As they walked, Amara noticed something remarkable. Despite the emergency conditions, the humans they passed appeared calm, many even engaged in casual conversation or laughter. Why are they not more concerned? She asked quietly. About the storm? Dante shrugged. This is Houston. Storms happen. If you panicked every time there was bad weather, you'd never get anything done. It's normalized adversity, Vorax observed. They've incorporated environmental threats into their daily existence. Riley, walking slightly ahead, called back. It's also about perspective. This isn't even close to the worst storm Houston has seen. Back in the 2030s, they had hurricanes that flooded the entire downtown area. Since then, they've adapted. Better infrastructure, improved emergency response, community resilience training. As they reached the affected area, Amara saw humans working efficiently to move electronic equipment away from a section of ceiling where water was dripping through. Without being instructed, Vorax immediately began assisting, his powerful exoskeleton easily lifting components that would have required multiple humans. Amara found herself automatically joining the effort, falling into the rhythm of the improvised response team. It was unlike any emergency protocol she had experienced. No clear hierarchy, no standardized procedures, yet somehow effective. Humans communicated in short bursts, anticipating needs, offering solutions, adapting to changing conditions moment by moment. "Watch the connector on that server rack," warned a technician as Amara lifted a particularly heavy unit. "If it disconnects completely, we'll lose the backup communication systems." Amara adjusted her grip with precision, stabilizing the delicate components. "Your infrastructure seems remarkably fragile for a species that faces regular environmental threats." The technician laughed. "Oh, it's not fragile, it's flexible, designed to bend rather than break. We'll have everything back online within hours once the storm passes." By the time they had secured all the vulnerable equipment, Amara's internal chronometer indicated that nearly 3 hours had passed. The humans thanked the volunteers with a casual appreciation that suggested such collaborative efforts were entirely normal. As they made their way back to the main convention hall, Dante checked the updated schedule on his device. "Good news. They've rescheduled the debate for tomorrow morning. That gives you both time to prepare." Riley nodded, then hesitated. "Captain Vorax, would you be willing to share your data on Elysian emotional regulation techniques? For debate preparation purposes only." Of course, Amara considered the request. Under normal circumstances, such information would be restricted to Elysian scientific archives. However, this mission was about cultural exchange as well as data collection. "I can provide a general overview." She agreed. "Though I should note that emotional regulation is somewhat misleading. The Elysian approach involves minimizing emotional responses entirely, not merely managing them." "That's exactly what I'm interested in," Riley said, her expression surprisingly earnest. "How do you make decisions without emotional input? What replaces intuition in your cognitive processes?" "Pure logic," Amara replied immediately. "Quantifiable risk assessment, cost-benefit analysis, stripped of subjective biases." "And does it work?" Riley pressed. "In actual survival situations, does pure logic consistently produce optimal outcomes?" Amara's mandibles tightened slightly, a subtle expression of discomfort that she immediately suppressed. "The Elysian survival rate across Class 8 and 9 Deathworlds is 83.7%. The data speaks for itself." "Fascinating," Riley murmured, making notes on her tablet. "Thank you, Captain. This will be extremely helpful." As Riley hurried ahead to prepare for her presentation, Dante fell into step beside Amara. "My sister can be intense when she's researching something. She's been obsessed with comparative xenopsychology since she was 12. She appears to have a particularly strong interest in challenging Elysian methodologies," Amara observed. Dante smiled ruefully. "That's Riley. She's always looking for the exception to the rule, the alternative explanation. Mom says she came out of the womb arguing about the delivery procedure, despite herself." Amara felt a flicker of what might have been amusement, an emotional response she quickly suppressed. "Your family unit has unusual interaction patterns." "You mean we're weird?" Dante laughed. "Probably. Dad designs death-defying roller coasters. Mom builds structures meant to withstand natural disasters. Riley debates everyone about everything. And I..." He paused, considering. "I guess I'm the normal one, which in our family is pretty weird itself." The conversation was interrupted by another power fluctuation, this one more severe. The convention center went completely dark for several seconds before the emergency systems engaged. "Status update," Amara requested automatically, her exoskeleton's bioluminescence providing additional light in the darkened corridor. Dante checked his communication device, its screen illuminating his face with a blue glow. Storms intensifying faster than predicted. They're upgrading it to hurricane status. His tone remained casual, but Amara detected a subtle shift in his physiological indicators. Slightly elevated heart rate. Minor perspiration increase. "Your stress response has activated," she noted. Dante looked surprised, then shrugged. "A little bit, yeah. Natural reaction. But it's manageable stress, the kind that keeps you alert without shutting down your thinking. You're suggesting that moderate emotional responses enhance survival functions rather than impeding them." "Exactly." Dante's expression brightened. "That's Riley's whole argument. Emotions evolved for a reason. They're shortcuts for complex risk calculations. Fear makes you cautious when caution is warranted. Excitement pushes you to seize opportunities. Empathy helps you protect your social group, which increases collective survival." They had reached the main convention hall, where emergency protocols were clearly in effect. Human security personnel were directing attendees to designated shelter areas, while maintenance workers secured loose equipment and reinforced vulnerable sections. Amara observed the proceedings with growing curiosity. There appears to be a functional contradiction in human behavior. You acknowledge the danger, yet simultaneously act as though it's routine. That's pretty much the human condition in a nutshell, Dante agreed. We normalize what we can't change and adapt to what we can. Speaking of which, he glanced at his device again. They're converting the debate hall into additional shelter space. The formal sessions are all postponed until tomorrow. Then how shall we proceed with our scheduled activities? Amara asked, somewhat disconcerted by the disruption to their carefully planned itinerary. Dante's expression became thoughtful. Well, we have a few options. We could help with the shelter preparations. They always need volunteers. Or, his eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. This is actually perfect. You wanted to experience how humans handle environmental challenges. What better way than to be right in the middle of our response? Before Amara could formulate an objection, Dante was leading her toward a group of emergency coordinators. Hey, Dr. Patel, I've got 2 extra pairs of hands for you. Well, technically 6 extra pairs, counting all their appendages. Captain Anvorax and Lieutenant Vorax are here to observe human adaptation strategies. The human doctor looked up from her digital clipboard, assessing the 2 Elysians with professional interest. Excellent. We need help distributing emergency supplies and setting up the sleeping areas. Can your exoskeletons handle heavy lifting? Our structural capacity exceeds human limitations by approximately 437%, Vorax stated matter-of-factly. Perfect, Dr. Patel replied without missing a beat. The supply pallets are arriving at the loading dock. Mason Williams is coordinating distribution. He'll tell you where everything needs to go. As they followed the doctor's directions, Amara transmitted privately to Vorax. This is highly irregular. We are scientific observers, not emergency response personnel. Indeed. Captain, Vorax agreed. However, direct participation may provide unique data points regarding human crisis management methodologies. A valid observation, Amara conceded, though she remained uncomfortable with the deviation from protocol. At the loading dock, they found Mason Williams directing a team of volunteers with surprising efficiency. When he spotted the Elysians, he waved them over enthusiastically. Captain, Lieutenant, just the reinforcements we need. We've got medical supplies, portable water purifiers, and emergency ration kits that need to be distributed to the main hall. My wife, Mia, is setting up a triage station for anyone with storm-related injuries. Without waiting for acknowledgement, he began assigning specific tasks, treating the highly decorated Elysian officers as simply additional resources in his impromptu response team. What was most remarkable to Amara was how readily the humans accepted their alien physiology. There were no stares, no hesitations, just practical adjustments to leverage their unique capabilities. "Those secondary appendages of yours will be perfect for stabilizing the water tanks," Mason noted, pointing to a stack of large containers. "They need to be perfectly level when installed, or the filtration system jams." For the next several hours, Amara and Vorax worked alongside humans from diverse backgrounds, convention staff, visiting scientists, local volunteers, and evacuees themselves. The storm raged outside, occasionally causing the entire structure to vibrate with its force. But inside, a remarkable social organism had formed. Amara observed how information flowed through the human network, formal communications via devices, certainly, but also casual exchanges, humor, personal connections. When problems arose, solutions emerged not from a central authority, but from the collective intelligence of the group. Most puzzling to her Elysian perspective was how emotional responses, far from creating chaos, seemed to facilitate effective action. Concern for others motivated exceptional effort. Brief moments of fear sharpened focus rather than impairing it. Even expressions of weariness became communal experiences that somehow renewed collective energy. "You're analyzing us again," Mia Williams commented, appearing beside Amara as she positioned a portable medical scanner. "I recognize that look from Riley when she's processing new data." Amara's antennae twitched in surprise. "Is my observational behavior that apparent?" Mia smiled. "Only to another scientist. Before I specialized in structural engineering, I studied anthropology. The way different cultures respond to environmental challenges has always fascinated me." "And what conclusions have you drawn about human responses?" Amara asked, genuinely curious. "That we're remarkably inconsistent." Mia laughed. "Brilliant and foolish in equal measure. We build cities in floodplains and on fault lines, then develop ingenious solutions when disaster strikes. We ignore warnings until the last minute, then display extraordinary cooperation during crises. It seems inefficient," Amara observed. "Oh, absolutely," Mia agreed readily. "But efficiency isn't always the most important metric. Resilience matters more in the long run. Systems that bend rather than break, that can improvise when standard procedures fail." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion near the main entrance. A group of emergency workers had arrived, soaking wet and supporting several injured civilians. "Flash flooding hit the northern sector," one of the workers explained, as Dr. Patel rushed to assist. "These folks were trapped in a partially submerged vehicle. The rescue boat capsized during extraction." Without conscious decision, Amara found herself moving toward the injured humans, her medical scanning appendages automatically extending to assess their conditions. Beside her, Vorax was already preparing emergency thermal regulators from their field kit. "Hypothermia in the elderly female," Amara reported, her training overriding any hesitation. "Possible fractured ribs in the adult male. The juvenile appears physically unharmed, but shows signs of psychological distress." Dr. Patel glanced up in surprise, then nodded briskly. "Thank you, Captain. Can your thermal regulators safely be used on humans?" "Affirmative," Vorax confirmed, already adjusting the settings. "They're designed to be species-neutral for emergency xenobiological applications." For the next hour, Amara worked alongside the human medical team, applying her extensive field training to assist with the incoming injuries. What began as an observational exercise had somehow transformed into active participation. More disturbing to her carefully maintained emotional equilibrium was the realization that she felt. Concerned for these fragile humans, invested in their survival in a way that transcended scientific interest. When the immediate medical crisis had stabilized, Amara found a moment to step back and recalibrate her thoughts. She located a relatively quiet corner of the vast hall and initiated her species' version of meditation, a physiological reset designed to clear emotional residue and restore logical primacy. She was still engaged in this process when Riley found her. "Captain Enverex, are you all right?" Amara's compound eyes refocused slowly. "I am functioning within normal parameters, merely conducting standard psychological maintenance." Riley studied her with surprising perception. "You're processing emotional responses, aren't you? I've been monitoring your biometric patterns throughout the day. Despite your species' emphasis on logic, you exhibit clear physiological indicators of emotional activation. Under normal circumstances, Amara would have firmly denied such an accusation. Emotional responsiveness was considered a developmental weakness among Elysians, a primitive trait to be overcome through rigorous training. Yet after hours of witnessing how emotions fueled human resilience, she found herself hesitating. There may be residual neural patterns that activate under certain conditions, she admitted carefully. Evolutionary artifacts that occasionally surface despite suppression training. Riley sat down beside her, setting aside her ever-present data tablet. What if they're not artifacts? What if emotional responses are actually sophisticated evolutionary adaptations that enhance survival in complex social species? That contradicts established Elysian science, Amara stated, though with less certainty than she would have expressed days earlier. "Science evolves," Riley replied simply. "New data requires new theories. Your species has survived incredible physical challenges through technological and physiological adaptation. Humans have survived through social cooperation and emotional intelligence. Different paths, both successful. A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the reinforced windows, momentarily drawing both their attentions to the storm outside. The hurricane had intensified to Category 3, according to the latest reports, with sustained winds of over 120 miles per hour. "You know what's interesting?" Riley continued. "In our historical records, the communities with the highest survival rates during natural disasters weren't necessarily the ones with the best physical infrastructure or emergency plans. They were the ones with the strongest social connections, people who checked on their neighbors, shared resources, supported each other emotionally as well as practically." Amara considered this a counterintuitive finding. "Only if you start from the assumption that emotions are weaknesses," Riley pointed out. "If instead you view them as evolutionary tools, specialized adaptations for enhancing group survival, then the data makes perfect sense." Before Amara could respond, their conversation was interrupted by an urgent announcement over the emergency communication system. "Attention all personnel. Structural integrity compromised in Sector 4. Immediate evacuation to central shelter areas required." Riley was on her feet instantly, checking her device. "That's where the debate preparation rooms were set up. Dad was installing some equipment there earlier." Amara's internal systems registered Riley's sudden spike in stress hormones, fear for her parent, a fundamentally emotional response. Yet instead of impairing the young human's function, this emotional surge seemed to sharpen her focus, accelerate her decision-making. "We should proceed to the designated shelter area," Amara stated, following protocol. "You go ahead," Riley replied, already moving toward the compromised sector. "I need to make sure Dad isn't still in there." Without conscious deliberation, Amara found herself following. This course of action contradicts safety protocols. Welcome to being human, Riley called back, not slowing her pace. Sometimes the logical choice and the right choice aren't the same thing. As they reached the cordoned area, emergency personnel were directing people away from a section where water had begun pouring through a damaged section of roof. The structural integrity warnings were obvious, even to non-engineers. Support beams visibly strained. Flooring buckled from water damage. "Dad!" Riley called out, scanning the chaos. "Has anyone seen Mason Williams?" A security officer intercepted them before they could enter the dangerous zone. "This area is off limits. We've evacuated everyone we could find. But the structural engineers say it could collapse any minute." "My father was working in room 412, Riley insisted. "He might still be in there." The officer checked his digital manifest. "We don't have anyone registered as still inside, but our sensors have been glitchy since the power fluctuations started. Amara's sensory appendages extended fully, scanning beyond human visual range. I'm detecting a single life sign in the northeast corner. Faint, but present." Riley's face paled. "That's where Dad was setting up the holographic projectors. He must be trapped." The security officer was already calling for backup, but his expression was grim. "The rescue team is dealing with multiple emergencies. It'll be at least 15 minutes before they can get here, and that section doesn't have 15 minutes left." Amara performed a rapid risk assessment, her exoskeleton sensors calculating structural weaknesses, collapse probabilities, and survival options. The logical conclusion was clear. Attempting rescue presented a 64.3% probability of failure, potentially resulting in additional casualties. Yet as she looked at Riley's face, the fear, determination, and hope warring in her expression, Amara found her decision-making algorithms incorporating variables that went beyond statistical analysis. "My exoskeleton can withstand the structural collapse," she stated, her voice steady. "I will attempt retrieval." The security officer began to object, but Amara was already moving, her powerful limbs easily pushing past the barricades. Behind her, she heard Riley arguing to follow, and Vorax's distinctive voice joining the discussion. The damaged section was in worse condition than it had appeared from outside. Water cascaded through multiple breaches in the ceiling. Electrical systems sparked dangerously, and the entire floor shifted underfoot with each step. Amara's environmental sensors registered multiple hazards: electrical shock potential, compromised air quality, imminent structural failure. Following her life sign readings, she navigated through the treacherous space toward the northeast corner. The signal grew stronger as she approached a section where part of the ceiling had already collapsed, creating a barrier of twisted metal and composite materials. "Mason Williams," she called out, her voice amplified to penetrate the noise of the storm and creaking structure. "Can you respond?" A weak cough answered her, followed by a strained voice. "Over here, pinned under the display rig." Amara calculated the safest approach path and began carefully removing debris. Her exoskeleton's enhanced strength made the work possible, but precision was crucial. Removing the wrong support could accelerate the collapse. She found Mason trapped beneath a fallen support beam, partially protected by the holographic equipment that had created a small pocket of space around him. His leg was clearly broken, and a head wound had left blood matting his hair. But he was conscious. "Captain Enverex?" He blinked in confusion. "You shouldn't be here. The whole section's coming down." "I am aware of the structural integrity issues," Amara replied, already scanning for the safest extraction method. "I am capable of withstanding forces that would be fatal to humans." "Not arguing with that." Mason grimaced as she began carefully lifting the beam. "But even Elysians can be crushed if enough tons of building fall on them." As if emphasizing his point, A massive crack appeared in the ceiling directly above them, accompanied by an ominous groaning sound. Amara made her decision instantly. Positioning her body over Mason's, she activated her exoskeleton's emergency reinforcement mode, a feature designed for extreme pressure environments that temporarily increased structural integrity at the cost of significant energy depletion. "This will be uncomfortable," she warned, wrapping her multiple limbs around the injured human and creating a protective cage with her body. Then, with precise calculation, she executed a rapid movement sequence that freed Mason from the debris, while simultaneously propelling them both toward the exit path she had mapped. The ceiling collapsed behind them, sending a shock wave of dust and debris that threatened to overtake their escape. Amara's sensory appendages registered multiple impacts against her reinforced exoskeleton, damage warnings flashing across her neural interface. They reached the relative safety of the corridor just as the majority of the room collapsed, the door frame barely holding as Amara pushed through with her precious cargo. Emergency personnel rushed forward, medical team members immediately attending to Mason, while security officers attempted to stabilize the deteriorating doorway. "Dad!" Riley pushed through the crowd, her face a mixture of relief and concern as she knelt beside her father. "Hey, Pumpkin." Mason managed a weak smile. "Your alien friend has quite the rescue technique, bit like riding one of my roller coasters, but with more concrete falling on your head." Amara stood slightly apart, running internal diagnostics on her damaged exoskeleton. Multiple fracture points, 2 appendages operating at reduced capacity, energy reserves critically depleted. The damage was significant, but reparable. Vorax approached, his sensory appendages twitching with what Amara recognized as agitation despite his outwardly calm demeanor. "Captain, your actions contradicted standard risk assessment protocols. The probability of successful extraction was below acceptable parameters." "I am aware, Lieutenant," Amara replied quietly. "Yet you proceeded anyway," Vorax continued, his tone not accusatory but puzzled. "May I inquire as to your decision-making criteria?" Amara watched as Riley helped the medical team stabilize her father, the human family's emotional connection plainly visible in every touch, every anxious glance, every relieved smile. "I believe," she said slowly, "that I may need to reassess our understanding of adaptive responses in complex social environments." Vorax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "You're suggesting that emotional factors may have survival value beyond our current metrics?" "It requires further study," Amara acknowledged, "but preliminary evidence indicates that what we have classified as evolutionary weaknesses may in fact be sophisticated adaptive mechanisms, particularly in environments where threats are chaotic rather than predictable." As the medical team prepared to transport Mason to the emergency treatment area, Riley broke away briefly to approach the Elysians. "You saved my father," she said simply, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." "It was a calculated risk," Amara replied automatically, falling back on familiar terminology. Riley smiled knowingly. "Was it? Or did you feel something that overrode your calculations? Something that told you the numbers weren't the whole story?" Before Amara could formulate a response that wouldn't violate Elysian's scientific orthodoxy, Riley continued, "Either way, I think we have our debate topic answered. Emotions aren't weaknesses. They're information. Different from logical analysis, but equally valuable. Sometimes more so." As Riley hurried back to her father's side, Vorax transmitted privately to Amara. "Captain, I've been reviewing our accumulated data from Earth experiences. There appears to be a significant correlation between emotional engagement and survival outcomes in human subjects. Moreover, I've detected anomalies in our own performance metrics that suggest similar patterns may exist within Elysian psychology, merely suppressed by our training. A concerning hypothesis, Lieutenant, Amara replied, though without her usual certainty. It would require substantial evidence to challenge established doctrine. Indeed, Vorax agreed. Perhaps tomorrow's debate will provide an opportunity to examine these questions more thoroughly. As they made their way back to the main shelter area, Amara found herself processing unfamiliar thought patterns. The rescue had activated something within her neural architecture, something that her training had identified as primitive and dangerous, yet had ultimately guided her toward a successful outcome where pure logical calculation would have resulted in failure. For the first time in her distinguished career, Captain Amara and Vorax began to consider that the Elysian approach to survival might be incomplete. Morning arrived with unexpected calm. The hurricane had passed during the night, leaving behind scattered destruction, but far less damage than predicted. The convention center had survived with only minor structural issues, and emergency teams were already working to restore full functionality. Amara stood at one of the massive windows, watching human repair crews efficiently clearing debris and reconnecting power systems. Her exoskeleton had self-repaired its most critical damage during the night, though several appendages still operated at reduced capacity. Remarkable recovery rate, Dante commented, joining her at the window. Both the infrastructure and the people. Your species appears to have optimized for resilience rather than prevention, Amara observed. An unusual evolutionary strategy. Necessity. Probably. Dante shrugged. We can't control everything, so we got really good at bouncing back. How are you feeling after yesterday? Riley told me about the rescue. Pretty impressive for someone who claims emotions are weaknesses. Amara's antennae twitched slightly. My actions were based on calculated potential outcomes. Uh-huh, Dante replied, clearly unconvinced. And those calculations just happened to prioritize my dad's life over your own safety? That sounds suspiciously like what humans call caring about someone. Before Amara could formulate a suitably scientific rebuttal, Vorax approached with news. Captain, the conference organizers have rescheduled today's sessions. The debate on adaptive strategies will proceed as planned in 1 hour. Excellent, Amara replied, welcoming the return to structured activities. I trust Riley will be able to participate, given her father's condition? Dad's fine, Riley said, appearing behind Vorax. Broken leg, mild concussion, and an ego boost that'll be unbearable for weeks. He's already designing a ride based on your rescue technique. But, Amara questioned. For Terra Park, Riley explained. He's calling it Alien Rescue Mission, virtual reality plus physical motion simulation. You'll probably get royalties. Dante laughed at Amara's bewildered expression. That's humanity for you. We turn near-death experiences into entertainment opportunities. As they made their way to the debate hall, Amara observed the convention returning to life around them. Alien representatives from across the galaxy mingled with human attendees, exchanging stories of the previous day's excitement. What struck her most was the casual way humans incorporated the natural disaster into their ongoing activities, acknowledging the danger while simultaneously treating it as merely an interesting interruption. The debate hall was nearly full when they arrived, with representatives from dozens of species filling the audience. The format was straightforward. Each participant would present their position, followed by rebuttals and audience questions. As the senior participant, Amara was invited to speak first. She approached the podium, her bioluminescent patterns automatically shifting to the formal configuration appropriate for scientific presentation. Distinguished colleagues, she began, her translator converting her complex harmonic speech into standard galactic. The Elysian approach to survival in hostile environments is founded on 3 core principles. logical analysis, technological adaptation, and emotional suppression. She proceeded to outline the scientific basis for the Elysian methodology, presenting impressive statistical data on their survival rates across various Deathworld classifications. Her delivery was precise, authoritative, and entirely in keeping with her training. Yet as she spoke, Amara found herself increasingly aware of an internal dissonance. The words she pronounced with such certainty no longer aligned perfectly with her recent experiences. The data was accurate, the logic sound, but somehow incomplete. When she concluded her presentation, the audience responded with respectful acknowledgement. Several xenobiologists made appreciative notes, while representatives from similarly logic-prioritizing species signaled their agreement. Then it was Riley's turn. The young human approached the podium with none of Amara's formal presence, yet commanded attention in her own way. Where Amara had presented with detached scientific precision, Riley spoke with engaged enthusiasm, her voice modulating with the emotional emphasis that Elysians were taught to eliminate. "Emotions aren't evolutionary leftovers," Riley began, challenging Elysian doctrine directly. "They're sophisticated information processing systems that operate in parallel with logical analysis. Fear accelerates threat responses. Empathy enables group coordination. Curiosity drives innovation. Together, they create a multi-layered adaptive strategy that's particularly effective in chaotic, unpredictable environments, like Earth." She proceeded to present her own data, survival statistics from Earth's natural disasters correlated with various emotional and social factors. Communities with strong emotional bonds consistently showed higher survival rates than those with superior physical resources but weaker social connections. Most compelling were the case studies she presented from the previous day's hurricane response. Riley had been collecting data throughout the crisis, documenting how emotional responses facilitated effective action rather than impeding it. Captain Enverex herself demonstrated this principle, Riley concluded, turning to face Amara directly. When presented with a rescue scenario where logical calculation indicated an unacceptable risk level, she nevertheless proceeded, and succeeded. Not because she abandoned logic, but because she integrated additional information that pure calculation couldn't capture. The debate hall filled with murmurs as all eyes turned to Amara. The implicit challenge was clear: deny Riley's interpretation and maintain Elysian orthodoxy, or acknowledge the validity of her observations. In that moment, Amara made a decision that would eventually revolutionize Elysian survival science. She approached the podium not with a rebuttal, but with a refinement. "Colleague Williams presents compelling evidence that merits serious scientific consideration," she began, her voice steady despite the radical nature of her words. "The Elysian approach has proven highly effective for specific environmental challenges, particularly those involving extreme physical conditions with predictable parameters. However, our experiences on Earth suggest that different types of hostile environments may require different adaptive strategies." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. An Elysian, especially one of Amara's standing, acknowledging limitations in their methodology was unprecedented. "Earth represents what might be termed a chaotic death world," Amara continued, the term forming in her mind as she spoke. "Its primary challenges are not extreme physical conditions, but rather the unpredictable interactions of complex systems, weather patterns, urban infrastructure, social dynamics. In such environments, rapid adaptive response may indeed be more valuable than perfect logical analysis." Riley's expression showed surprise, quickly replaced by thoughtful consideration. She hadn't expected agreement, much less expansion upon her thesis. "I propose," Amara concluded, "a collaborative research initiative to develop an integrated survival methodology that incorporates both approaches: Elysian logical precision and human emotional intelligence. Different tools for different challenges, combined to create a more comprehensive survival science. The debate hall erupted in discussion, representatives from various species recognizing the potential implications for their own survival strategies. The moderator struggled to maintain order as audience members began offering their own perspectives and experiences. In the midst of the academic excitement, Vorax transmitted privately to Amara. "Captain, this represents a significant deviation from established doctrine. The Elysian High Command may not approve. They will when they review the data." Amara replied with newfound confidence. "Science advances through evidence. Lieutenant, our mission was to accurately classify Earth's challenges, and we have discovered something more valuable than expected." As the formal debate concluded and the audience dispersed into smaller discussion groups, Dante approached the podium with an expression of undisguised admiration. "That was not what I expected," he admitted. "I thought you two would be at each other's throats, not proposing revolutionary joint research. Scientific progress requires openness to new evidence," Amara stated, though the principles she now expressed so confidently would have seemed heretical to her just days earlier. Riley joined them, her data tablet clutched excitedly against her chest. "Captain, I've already started drafting a research proposal. If we combine my observational data with your quantitative metrics, we could establish an entirely new framework for understanding adaptive responses in complex environments." "Your enthusiasm is appropriate," Amara acknowledged, struggling to find terminology that bridged her traditional Elysian communication patterns and her evolving understanding. Dante laughed. "That's Elysian for I'm excited too." "Riley, I am not," Amara began automatically, then paused, her compound eyes focusing and refocusing as she processed an unexpected realization. "Actually, I believe I am experiencing a neurochemical response pattern consistent with what humans term excitement. It's quite informative." Riley's expression brightened further. "That's exactly my point. Emotions are information, different from logical analysis but equally valuable. They tell you things that pure calculation can't, especially about social dynamics and complex systems." Over the next several days, as the convention center returned to full operation and the conference resumed its scheduled activities, Amara found herself engaged in an unprecedented collaborative effort. Riley's theoretical insights combined with Amara's methodological rigor produced a preliminary framework for what they termed integrated adaptive response theory. The Elysian High Command, after initial skepticism, recognized the potential value of this new approach, particularly for environments where traditional Elysian methods had proven less effective. They authorized an extended research mission, with Amara and Vorax to remain on Earth for continued data collection. On their final evening before the conference concluded, Amara stood on the observation deck of the now-repaired convention center, watching the sunset over Houston. The city showed remarkably few signs of the recent hurricane, repairs well underway, systems restored, life continuing with what she now recognized as characteristic human resilience. Dante joined her, offering a container of what humans called ice cream, a peculiar nutritional supplement that seemed to hold cultural significance beyond its caloric value. "So," he said casually, "what's the final verdict? Is Earth a death world after all?" Amara considered the question carefully, her compound eyes reflecting the vibrant colors of the sunset. "Earth is unique in my experience. Its individual environmental challenges would rate relatively low on the Elysian Index. Moderate gravity, breathable atmosphere, manageable temperature range. Yet the combination of these factors, along with the chaotic interaction patterns and the psychological components, too complicated to classify, Dante suggested. Perhaps that is the appropriate classification, Amara replied. Earth is a complexity world, a place where the greatest challenges and the greatest adaptive advantages lie not in extreme conditions, but in the intricate relationships between conditions, systems, and beings. Dante nodded thoughtfully. I like that. Complexity world. Sounds less dramatic than Deathworld, but maybe more accurate. Your sister would argue that accuracy is preferable to drama. Usually, Dante agreed with a smile, though she makes exceptions for debate competitions. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the city lights began to illuminate against the darkening sky. Each tiny point represented human lives, continuing despite recent adversity, adapting and persisting in ways that Amara was only beginning to understand. You know, Dante said eventually, humans have something besides logic and emotion that helps us survive. Indeed. What additional factor have we overlooked in our research? Dante gestured toward the horizon, where the last colors of sunset were fading. Art, music, poetry. The things we create not because they're useful, but because they're beautiful. They don't help us survive physically, but they give us reasons to want to survive, to keep going even when it's difficult. Amara's sensory appendages extended slightly, processing this unexpected perspective. An intriguing hypothesis, purposefulness as an adaptive advantage. More than that, Dante insisted. Joy, wonder, appreciation of beauty, the things that make survival worthwhile. As the stars began to appear above them, Amara found herself experiencing something new, a response that her Elysian training had never acknowledged, a way of perceiving that combined sensory input, emotional resonance, and logical appreciation into something greater than the sum of its parts. I believe, she said carefully, that I may need to extend our research parameters to include these factors. They represent a significant gap in our understanding of adaptive responses. Dante smiled. I think that's human, for I see the beauty too. Amara did not correct him. In the days that followed, as the conference concluded and the various delegations prepared to depart, Amara finalized her official report to the Elysian High Command. Her classification of Earth defied conventional categories, establishing a new designation that would eventually transform xenobiological science. Complex Adaptive Environment, Type 1. The accompanying research proposal, co-authored with Riley Williams, outlined a multi-year study of integrated response methodologies, combining Elysian analytical precision with human emotional intelligence and creative adaptation. On the morning of the Elysian delegation's scheduled departure, Amara received an unexpected honor. The Earth representative to the Galactic Council presented her with the newly created Xeno-Adaptive Pioneer Medal. Recognizing her groundbreaking work in cross-species survival methodologies, Captain Anvorex has demonstrated the very principles she studies, the representative announced, adapting her own perspectives and methodologies when presented with new evidence, and in doing so, creating greater understanding between our species. As Amara accepted the medal, she found herself experiencing what humans would call pride, not merely in her own accomplishments, but in the collaborative achievement it represented. The emotion, far from clouding her judgment as Elysian doctrine had warned, provided a different kind of clarity. Her final meeting before departure was with the Williams family. Mason, his leg encased in a medical stabilizer, but otherwise recovered, presented her with a miniature model of the alien rescue ride already under construction at Terra Park. Honorary lifetime passes for the whole Elysian Corps, he declared cheerfully. though I'm not sure your exoskeletons will fit in the standard seats. We'll design appropriate accommodations, Mia assured her, the structural engineer already sketching modifications on her tablet. Riley presented a more academically appropriate gift, a comprehensive data package containing their preliminary research findings, along with proposed methodologies for the extended study. "I've been accepted to the Interspecies Exchange Program," she announced proudly. "I'll be joining the research team on Elysia next year to continue our work." "Your contributions will be valuable," Amara stated, still struggling to integrate emotional expression into her formal communication patterns. "She means she's looking forward to working with you," Dante translated with a grin. Elysian emotional vocabulary is still a work in progress. "As is human logical precision," Amara countered, attempting the verbal exchange humans called banter. Her final moments on Earth were spent on the observation deck, where she and Dante had watched the sunset. The city stretched below them, pulsing with the complex rhythms of human activity. Chaotic, yet purposeful. Vulnerable, yet resilient. "What will you tell them when you get home?" Dante asked. "About Earth, I mean." Amara considered the question, her compound eyes taking in the panorama of human civilization one last time before departure. "I will tell them that we have been measuring survival by incomplete metrics," she said finally. "That adapting to hostile environments requires more than physical resilience or technological solutions. That sometimes, what appears to be weakness from one perspective is strength from another." Dante nodded, understanding the significance of such a statement from an Elysian of Amara's standing. "That's a pretty big paradigm shift." "Indeed. But as your sister would say, the evidence supports the conclusion." Amara turned her gaze from the city to her human companion. "I will also tell them that Earth has much to teach us if we are willing to learn." As the Elysian survey vessel departed from Earth's orbital station, Amara stood at the command deck, watching the blue planet recede on the view screen. Beside her, Vorax was already organizing their extensive data for transmission to the Elysian Scientific Corps. "An unexpectedly productive mission, Captain," he observed, "though not in the ways we anticipated." "The most valuable discoveries rarely are, Lieutenant," Amara replied, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to reflect her new understanding. "We came to classify a world, but instead found reason to reclassify ourselves." The ship accelerated toward the jump point, leaving Earth behind, but carrying forward the lessons it had taught them. That sometimes, the greatest adaptive advantage comes not from overcoming emotions, but from integrating them. That resilience emerges from complexity rather than simplicity. And that perhaps the most dangerous death world is one where beings survive without discovering why survival matters. In her private log, Captain Amara and Vorax recorded one final observation. "Earth has revealed a truth that transcends traditional survival metrics. That adaptation is not merely about enduring hostile conditions, but about finding meaning within them." Perhaps this is the ultimate evolutionary advantage, not just to survive, but to transform survival itself into something more profound.